Boatworks today is sponsored by Total Boat and Alexial Yacht Coatings, as well as supported by the generosity from the beautiful folks over on Patreon. Thank you so much.
So welcome back to the shop, everybody. Now, where I left off last week, unfortunately I ended up working myself out of work. And what I mean by that is I got all the glass laid up for this hatch cover, popped out of the mold. It was beautiful. I couldn't have been happier. But as a result, I burned through most, and in some cases, all of the materials that I had on hand. Specifically, my fiberglass, the 1708. Now, what I was going to do is, kind of switch gears a little bit and focus on some different aspects of the Bertram project here. But when I was looking around at everything was going to require some fiberglassing. So at the end of the day, all I was able to do until materials came in was sand. I mean, I could have sanded for days and days and days, but that wouldn't have given me any content to put together for this week. So I mean, you can spin things a lot of different ways, but there's no sexy way to spin just hours and hours of just sanding, right? So instead, what I want to do is I want to kind of address kind of an interesting topic that came up last week when I was doing my consultations. Now, if you're not familiar, quick 30-second pitch here. I do a lot of private consultations with folks when they're either planning or working through their own projects on their boats. From material selection to project planning, going through step by step how to do certain things. So if you have something coming up where you think that might be helpful or you might be interested in it, I'll have links down below in the description. It's to my Patreon page. If you think it'd be helpful, great. If you think you got everything covered that you have coming up, that's great as well. Then these videos are kind of doing their job. But what came up a few different times last week was they're like, with the folks I was working with, they're like, all right, we're at the tail end of things. We're finally going to be able to launch the boat, salvage what's left of the summer. And a lot of the stuff that we do, we're offshore. We're typically out fishing. We're 20, 30, 40 miles off. And what do we do if we're that far out and something happens? So, all right, well, I'm not quite sure specifically what it is you're asking about, but are you talking about like a first aid kit, something like that? They're like, no. Like we hit a rock, somebody hits us, whatever it may happen to be, the boat becomes compromised. Okay, well that simplifies it. Basically what you're looking for is like an oh shit kit. They're like, yes. All right, cool. I got you covered. So kind of going through and kind of giving this a little bit more thought throughout the week, I'm going to break this down into two different categories, right? One's going to be specifically if your boat is gel coated, and the other is going to be if your boat is painted. There is some small overlap, but for the most part, they're two kind of separate and distinct lists. Now, a couple of things that I want to kind of emphasize here before I get into the specific materials. First one being, we are talking about an SOS bag or an O snap bag. So we need something to kind of keep everything contained and in an area where we can find it very quickly if we need to, and to kind of keep everything safe. So this is my old tackle box, or my repair kit, essentially. I've had this particular box for well over 20 years. This is what I used when I was doing all of my mobile repair work, as well as contract work back at the shop. This thing went everywhere with me. And as you can see, it's got a few miles on it, right? But this worked out perfectly. I was able to keep all of my main essentials in here, organized, clean, and specifically dry. And anything that I needed, I could just flip the lid, grab it, and go. Now, there's nothing special about this. The only two things that I would say are kind of important. Get one that's made out of plastic and not metal. Obvious reasons, metal is going to potentially scratch and or damage the gel coat or the boat if it's dropped or whatever, but it's also going to rust. Plastic, not an issue. Doesn't really react at all. I mean, this thing has had styrene and acetone and everything all over it. Nothing is melted, so whatever they're making these tackle boxes out of, they're durable as hell. So it's small little tackle box like this. I think this is probably 12, maybe 20 inches wide and whatever, tall enough to fit like a quart-sized can of something. And the other point I want to emphasize here is that as far as the volumes, how large of containers we're talking about, we're talking small, like quarts or even pints if it's offered in some of these materials. We're not stocking up a shop to do a major repair work. We're looking to kind of put a Band-Aid on something until we can essentially get back to the hospital or back to the slip, right? So we're talking quarts and pints of everything. So not gallons, although all the materials I'm going to be showing you here today are going to be in the larger volumes. That's just what I've got here. But if I say, you know, have some of this and I'm showing a gallon of it, take that down to like either a quart or a pint if it's offered in that volume. Again, we're looking to have everything kept inside one of these little tackle boxes here. So we're not talking large volumes on anything. Also, the last thing I want to emphasize is that the order of the items I'm going to be talking about here, they are in no particular order. So number one isn't necessarily going to be the most important. Not at all, no particular order. So just kind of keep that in mind as we're working through this list. Now to kick things off here, I'm going to start off with the list of materials that I think you should have on hand if your boat is finished with gel coat. Now what I mean by that is when you're physically looking at it, if the most exterior surface, the finished surface, is gel coat, these are the materials that I think you should have on hand. Now with one exception, all the materials I'm going to be talking about here are all going to be polyester based. Now many years ago I did do a video on, you know, if you can apply polyester, you know, specifically gel coat over top of epoxy. And my opinion on that still holds true, that while the answer is technically yes, in order for that to happen, the conditions in which you cure the epoxy and apply the gel coat, everything has to be very specific. As far as you need to be doing some post-cure on the epoxy, raising up the temperatures, it needs to have an extended cure time, you know, 3+ weeks, not days, not hours, weeks. And for the most part, it's just not going to be applicable for an oh snap kind of a situation. So again, with one exception, all the materials I'm going to be talking about here are all going to be polyester based. Now, the first product I want to talk about is one that I do not have here with me. Now, when I was at my old shop in Wisconsin, when I was doing contract work and a lot of work in the marinas, this was a material that I absolutely had on hand with me at all times. It's a product that's made by Putty, and it is their Splash Zone. Now, this is a pretty unique product in the sense that you can use this underwater. Now, that's not the same thing as saying that you can use this below the waterline. A lot of materials say that, you know, you can use them below the waterline, and you can. Very few products, however, you're able to mix up, literally just grab it from the can, mix it, and while it's still green, jump in the lake, jump in the ocean, swim under your boat, and pack it wherever it needs to go, and it will fully cure, completely submerged underwater from a green state. Not many materials are able to do that. So where would this come into play? A through hull fitting came loose. The keel, you hit a rock or you hit something, the keel hull joint opened up. Now you've got your bilge flooding with water. The prop shaft slipped out. It happens. This is something that you can mix it up. It's not exactly a clean material to work with, but in an emergency, who cares? You mix it up. It's kind of like mixing Play-Doh. Mix it up, jump in, and then paste it wherever it needs to go. It's going to stay there, and it will fully cure and stop whatever leaks you have coming in. So this is epoxy based. This is the one item that I said for the gel coat list was going to be the exception. Splash Zone is epoxy based. And, you know, honestly, that's fine, because more than likely the area you're going to be using this type of material is going to be underwater. What is commonly the coating that you have on a boat below the waterline? It's going to be bottom paint, and not gel coat. So for that reason, I think this is one of those must-haves. I always had this in my kit, and it's actually saved not my bacon, but someone else's bacon. I don't remember who they were anymore, but I've saved at least 2 projects or 2 boats that I know for sure because of this product. So I got to get a hold of Tom Malero over at Putty to see what the actual shelf life of this stuff is, but it's quite a while. Now, the next item that I think you should have on hand is going to be some structural repair putty. Now, this is a pre-thickened, non-waxed, fiberglass reinforced putty. Think of this as Bondo on steroids, but times 10. The reason this is so versatile is because it's a fairly quick setup time. So by the time this is catalyzed and applied, it's usually starting to gel and set up within 20 to 30 minutes. And as far as the type of applications for this, a piece of hardware got ripped off your deck, you can glue that piece of hardware back down if you're able to find it. You can glue that back down with this material. And again, we're talking about temporary fixes. Piece of hardware got ripped off and now you have some exposed coring material. You can glaze over top of that material with this repair putty. If a bulkhead gets knocked loose, you can use this for creating your fillets, which is going to bring us into our next product, which is going to be some resin to actually wet out some fiberglass. Now, here specifically, I'm going for a laminating or a non-wax polyester resin. Now, this is, for obviously wetting out fiberglass. And as far as the types of glass that I suggest you have on hand, I would say there's two kinds. You've got some 1708 and then some chop strand matting. Now, each of these have their own particular strengths, right? When you're looking for some build, some stiffness, some rigidity, strength, 1708 is going to be the material that you want to have on hand. Now, if you're talking about sealing or waterproofing something, that's where chop strand really shines. It doesn't have much in the way of strength or stiffness. It has some, but not a whole lot. Now, the way that I suggest you have this is cut it into little slits. It doesn't have to be 2 or 3 inches wide like this is. Take a yard of material. Let's just say it's a 3 by 3 foot section of fiberglass, regardless what type. Cut it into strips, that are going to be, say, 4 inches wide or 6 inches wide, and then roll them up in one tiny little roll like this with some fiberglass. You can have a lot of material on hand, and it'll easily fit in your SOS bag and stay nice and dry. Works. Both of these types of glass work beautifully with polyester resin. Now, the next material I think is always just nice to have on hand is going to be some good old-fashioned gel coat, right? Ideally, if you could already have it pre-tinted to color match your boat, that would be awesome. Now, this is not like an emergency type material. This is more of a cosmetic type thing. But even still, if you've got some color match gel coat on hand, you're doing some island hopping, you come into a slip a little bit sideways, the wind takes you, whatever. You get a scratch down the side of the hull, or you drop something on deck, you get a chip. And gel coat is going to be a pretty quick turnaround, especially if you already have it color matched. Now, as far as color matching goes, what tints to use, I'm going to stick with the most popular color, which is going to be a cream, off-white, beige, something along those lines. Most boats are some variation of those. In order to match any of those colors, you only need 3 pigments. You need a black, a brown, and a yellow. Between these 3 things, you can match any type of white-ish type, type hull or deck. So again, it's a cosmetic type finishing, but even still, it's very handy to have on hand. If you already have it pre-tinted, taking care of a chip or a scratch on the hull, it's literally an afternoon project. Just take it out, catalyze it, put it on, wet sand it, polish it out, and it's gone. No one ever knew that anything ever happened, right? So again, I think this is just a very handy thing to have on hand. And I do, again, just like all the other polyester materials, I do recommend that you get non-waxed or laminating type gel coat. Now, up to this point, everything that I've talked about material-wise, except for the splash zone, has been a non-wax or a laminating material. Now, the way that we take a laminating material and fully cure it, turn it into a finishing type material, is by adding some of this. This is just a wax additive. There's several manufacturers that make this stuff. Specifically, it is a wax that is meant to be mixed in with composite materials as a surfacing agent. So again, a little bottle like this little thing will last you years, and that's if you had a really bad couple of seasons. This will last you a very, very long time. I believe this is only mixed in at 3% of the overall mix ratio, and this will fully cure off any of your polyester products, and that way they'll be able to develop all of their full working characteristics. So again, very handy to have on hand along with all of these other polyester based materials. Now the next item is going to be some just good old-fashioned sealant or caulking, things to take care of leaks, whether it's a leaking port light or deck fitting or tracks if you're on a sailboat, whatever it may happen to be. Leaky hoses, kind of a fun little fact. If you get some caulking and you put it on, say, like a barbed fitting, slipped the hose on top of that, hose clamp it, having a type of sealant or a caulking makes a world of difference as far as making sure, it's kind of like a belt and suspenders to make sure it is not ever going to leak again. You might have a hell of a time getting the fitting off, but that's a problem for another day. Making sure that it's not going to leak, that's probably priority number one. Now, there are many different options out there. I've always said, that whatever material you use for bedding down or sealing a piece of hardware, you don't really want to have it as a permanent bond. There are some applications where having that type of material is 100% absolutely useful, but in more situations than not, you want to be able to remove it just for general routine servicing. Now, this is the one I'm going to put a disclaimer on this. This is a new product from Total Boat. I have not used this yet, but I am intending to use this on my Bertram when I go to put the Armstrong bracket back on. I'm going to let you guess kind of who, what other product this might be similar to. But the point being, it is a semi-permanent, meaning it is removable. Now, again, because I haven't used it, I can't say for 100% certainty, what I'm gonna think of it. But what I do know is I know how much time and effort goes into the R&D side of things for Total Boat. They dot their I's and they cross their T's, and then they double check it again and over and over and over. So even though I haven't used it, I don't have any doubts or reservations on the quality of this stuff, that it's going to do exactly what I need it to do. So whether it's this or a similar product, slightly different name, either one either one is going to be fine. But the point being, this is just a kind of a good, safe thing to always have on hand. And again, as long as this tube is not opened, this is going to be good for well over a year, providing it's stored correctly. So stick it in your bug out box and you should be good for the entire season. So there were my top items to have if your boat is finished with gel coat. Now we're going to switch gears and go over to if your boat is finished off with paint. There's a lot of carryover from poly over to epoxy, but some slight variations. The number one item for the painted list, again, is going to be Splash Zone from Pettit. This is just one of those materials. I can't overstate this enough. It is just, in an emergency, it is incredibly handy to have on hand. I mean, it's just incredibly handy. I've already talked about it. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, but I will say that is, in my opinion, one of those must-haves in your back pocket. Now, moving on to some of the other type materials. You're going to be doing some glass work. You got some patching, hardware. Again, something got ripped off. Something went wrong, right? So if we're going to be doing some glass work, you're going to have some epoxy. Now, this is their 5-to-1, either the 5-to-1 or their 2-to-1, perfectly fine to use. The one thing that I would stress is that for the hardener, this one happens to be slow. For the hardener, I would highly recommend that you get a fast hardener. Again, we're talking about an oh snap kind of a moment. We don't want it to take 5-6 hours to start gelling. We want it to start gelling within a half an hour. So get the epoxy, again, 2-to-1, 5-to-1, either one will work just fine, but get the fast hardener. Now, as far as the type of glass to have on hand, I would just strictly 100% just have a nice roll of some 1708 on hand. Whether it's cut into a 3-inch wide strip or a 6-inch wide, doesn't really matter, it's arbitrary, but have a good roll of this on hand in your bug out kit. Now, to work with the epoxy, you've got a couple different materials. The first one that I think is always incredibly handy to have is going to be some silica. This is a material that you add in to the epoxy for thickening it. It'll go from a runny, loose epoxy to a thick paste to something that literally you can toss it up on the ceiling and it'll stick there forever. So it's just a very, very good material to have on hand. You can use this with both epoxy as well as polyester, but I think it's typically more often used with epoxy. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's used quite a bit with epoxy. Next on the list, I'm kind of blowing through this because it's only 7:30 at night and it looks like it's pitch black. We got some storms coming in. It's been kind of a wild week. Next is going to be this stuff. Now, this is one of those materials that you didn't really think you needed until you tried it, right? I will say this is a product that is typically used kind of sparingly. It is a little bit on the costly side, but the convenience factor is unable to be beat. This is, if you're not familiar with what this is an epoxy base, so it's got a part A and a part B inside the same cartridge. And then as you pump it out, it mixes inside of a static nozzle or a mixing nozzle, and then you pump it out. Incredibly handy. Stick it in the caulking gun, pump it out, boom. You've got some pre-thickened fiberglass fortified material at the tips of your fingers. It's just incredibly handy, easy, fast to use. But again, you're gonna use this for something like a piece of hardware got ripped off, you need to kind of bed that back down, or a piece of hardware got ripped off and you just need to kind of plug the holes temporarily. Works beautifully for this. Again, and another nice thing about this stuff is you only use what you truly need. When you're done, you don't need to use up the whole caulking or the whole tube. You pump out whatever you need, leave the cap on, set it aside, and walk away. It's done. You know, next time you need to use it, replace the nozzle, put a new one on, and you're all set. It's literally a 30-second swap over. Next on the list is going to be some caulking. Now again, whether it's this particular caulking or something of a similar name, either one is going to work perfectly fine. You just want something in case you got a leaky port light or a through hull fitting needs to get redone. Yes, you can redo a through hull fitting while it's still in the water. It's a little sketchy, but it can be done. But anyways, when it comes to leaks above or below the water line, it's always a good idea to have something like this on hand. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a cartridge. They make some other ones that are in like a little 3-ounce tube, kind of like what you get toothpaste in. Something like that would probably be a bit more adequate or suitable for fitting in your bug out kit. But either way, again, one of those things, it's kind of like a must-have, something you should have on hand at all times. So with playing a little bit of Tetris, you can fit quite a few things, quite a few of your essentials in here. We've got all of our mixing cups, a couple different sizes, some tape hiding down there, pigments for the gel coat, mixing sticks, and a couple different size brushes, the nozzles for mixing the Thixo, sanding block. Now these two things, this could either be epoxy and hardener, or it could be the gel coat and, I don't know, polyester resin, the laminating resin. You got your silica, your structural repair putty, some fiberglass down in here, your caulking, as well as the Thixo. You can fit a lot of stuff in here, and again, the focus with all of this was to have small volumes of each item, but have quite a few items on hand. One little tackle box like that, seriously, I used that on 99% of all of my, even when I was doing remote work. That kit was with me every single day that I went, that I was working, whether it was out on a boat, in a marina, in my shop, wherever. This is where I kept all my essentials, and it just keeps everything nice and tidy and organized. It used to keep everything clean, but then I started using the actual box as like a mixing lid and all sorts of other nonsense. But point being, get a cheap ass little tackle box, plastic, not metal. Keep your essentials in there, and you never know, it may end up saving the day. I'll leave it at that. So again, on that note, it seems like every evening that I'm doing the finishing up the recording here, we've got some major weather coming in, and I'm getting kind of pushed out of here and rushed a little bit more than I'd care to. But anyways, with that said, I'm gonna button this one up because I don't know what's going on outside, and I want to get back down to the house and get my truck in the garage. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found this informational, and if you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you in advance. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave those down below. I'll do my best to follow up with you. And as always, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Have a safe and wonderful weekend. And I'll see you next week back with our normal programming.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.